This is what, March the 15th?
Yes.
It is. Is it the
March
Ides
the
of March
15th. The Ides of March, yes. Got to watch the Ides of March. That's when bad things happen. So, Bible prophecy lesson number 259, and we're in Isaiah chapter 41. And we'll review last week's lesson. Got one sign of the times, and then everything else is, it's coronavirus.
Yes.
And so we've already been through that several times. So we got scripture of the day, and then we'll do Isaiah chapter 41. And so before we get started, let's have a brief word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, our creator and maker, and the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Again, we're grateful that we have this opportunity to gather together as brothers and sisters in Christ and study your word, come to you in prayer, and offer you our thanksgiving. And we are grateful that you've given us life and given us this opportunity to gather together. And we just pray that you would continue to watch over us, particularly as we advance in years and everything seems to be breaking down. And so we just ask that you would be with each one of us in our health issues and give us a week of freedom. And particularly be with Gary as he is in recovery right now. And for all of us as we are struggling with health issues. And particularly we ask that you would put a league of angels around each one of us and protect us from the coronavirus and any other infectious diseases that are going around. So we just ask your Holy Spirit to be with us now as we study these things of Isaiah, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Okay. Let's see. That's a big movie screen.
Yeah.
Right?
We have a good one. Well, go ahead.
Well, yeah, you want to get out of here before midnight?
No, I was going to talk about the one I think Ken and Doris maybe have seen it. I don't think you guys have, where they really found the mountain of fire.
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai, the real Mount Sinai.
The real Mount Sinai. We'll do that sometime.
We'll do that sometimes.
It's really interesting, and it's very obvious this was the real one. So we'll go through that.
Okay.
So last week's lesson 258, we were in Isaiah 38, 39, and 40. They were kind of small chapters. But in that chapter, it was pretty profound that Hezekiah became ill and was told that he was going to die. And then Hezekiah petitioned the Lord, and he got 15 more years. And of course, we learned that during that 15-year period, he had a son, Manasseh, who was just a rotten guy. Although he was rotten to the core, he had an epiphany, and he came back to the Lord. So in his latter years, he was a good guy. But then he gave birth to a son who was a bad guy. And this seems to yo-yo back and forth in that particular time. So at any rate, God said that you can rely on my word that you'll have 15 more years, and I will make the sundial back up 10 degrees. If you read that word 10 degrees in the Hebrew, it's really not that clear. It could mean 100 degrees. And if that's 100 degrees, that's a big backup. So it was significant, the backup. And as I recall, there was one of the tribes, Aztecs or one of those groups, had made a note of this event on this side of the world, noting that the planet actually backed up. So Hezekiah showed the emissaries from Babylon all of his wealth. Big mistake. And for having done that, he was told by God that his wealth would be all transferred to Babylon. Everything he showed them. And, of course, Hezekiah, he said, well, big deal. So you're going to transfer it all. At least in my day and time, it's going to be all right. So he was kind of, I don't know how you'd call that, but he just didn't seem to take it to account very much. So Then we found out in the later chapters that God expressed his displeasure over anyone who makes an idol, because he is the only God there is, and these idols that men manufacture, they can't do anything, they can't even stand up, they can't walk, they certainly can't create the universe, and they can't prophesy, and so God, you know, he is very much displeased with anyone who worships idols. And of course, as we have noted, in our particular society, sports is almost an idol. Now, people are being...
They're godless.
They're godless. All the sports are being knocked out right now because of this coronavirus. I just think it's really interesting, the way everything is happening right now. Who's growling?
This is the chairs.
Oh, I thought it was a
No,
dog.
they're not growling.
Okay. Well, white evangelists say Trump fights for their beliefs, Pew study finds. And you know, the leftists, they just are beside themselves, because Trump is clearly a man of the world in some of his actions. And we all can concede that fact. And what I understand is, how in the world can you people be following this guy? But, you know, the point is, it's not the fact that he's not a saint, but his ideas are perfectly in parallel with those of white conservatives. And most conservatives believe that he is overwhelmingly in alignment with our values.
Carl, do you think he was that way before he ran for president?
You know, that's a good question. I didn't know much about the guy. I just saw him on TV, and I was never interested in these shows that he was running. And I never watched the beauty pageants or any of that sort of stuff.
Or that last one, You're Fired one.
Yeah.
Apprentice.
Yeah,
I think that Mike Pence had a tremendous influence on him.
I don't know where he came across Mike Pence at either.
Well, they were searching for a good vice
Yeah.
president.
Oh, well, maybe that too, but his wife, his current wife, Melania, she is a Christian 100%. And so maybe she had some influence on him, I'm not sure. But the interesting thing is how his value system aligns perfectly with,
America.
well,
The old
America,
America.
the old America,
Yeah.
and with Christians too.
Yes.
You know, we have forever wondered, why in the world have we declared Jerusalem the capital and we've never moved there? Trump looks at that and says, well, let's move there, and he does it. And it just blows everybody's mind. But, you know, it's like he operates independent of any political wind that's blowing at the moment. And the things that he has done, I am flabbergasted. The fact that he's putting up a wall on the border, who ever would have thought that could happen? I never did, because I thought everybody kept passing it off because, you
He
know,
made promises that he kept.
yeah, that's,
right.
I guess
And he
that's
has
one
a-
of the
I think
things.
that comes maybe from a business sense. His business, he's going to do what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
But you
And
see,
that's how he operates.
this is very atypical of a politician. Politicians promise you the moon and never deliver a thing.
We can't get it done.
No, we can't do it because, oh, well, those sneaky Democrats, they snuck in there and subterfuged the
But don't
whole
you think
thing.
too, a lot of this, he's an instrument?
Absolutely.
So,
But I was wondering why in the world Trump got elected. I'm telling you, when I saw the media's presentation of the facts, I said, man, there's no way this guy's going to get elected.
When we went to bed that night, we thought there's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. That's why I went to bed early. I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I woke up in the next day, and you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Oh my gosh, yes.
oh, I was up till 2:30.
Oh, you were watching it?
Yeah, I
Me
tried,
too.
I
Well,
couldn't. I fell asleep about 2:30, and they had not called Pennsylvania. You too? I didn't
I
make
was
it.
up.
Just assumed Hillary's gonna
Oh,
win.
yeah, I
We just went
finally
to bed.
gave it up too.
Yeah, that's, and I think Trump did the same thing too. He pretty much gave up on
I think
it.
so too.
Yeah,
And lo and behold,
I know.
that
well,
whole
this
thing-
passage came to my mind as, and we had quoted this passage and even prayed for the Lord to intervene, but we never really expected it, you know? I mean, you got faith and all, but this country of ours was so far down in the toilet, I didn't think we deserved another chance. But at any rate, this is 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Then the Lord appeared to Solomon. This is right after he built the temple by night, and said to him, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. This was the temple that Solomon built. When I shut up heaven and there is no rain, or command locusts to devour the land, or send pestilence among my people, then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. I think we have had a second chance, because I think, as strange as it may be, that God heard our prayers. And we got a second chance in this land. But you know, the left side of the equation is, they're just beside themselves. They cannot stand what has happened. They had this wonderful game plan laid out for globalism, and it fell apart right before their eyes. That's one of the reasons why they're so mad. At least that's my belief anyway. But my people, who are my people? The question today is, who are my people anyway? Well, in this particular passage, my people are the sons of Jacob, right? Also known as the Israelites. They're my people. So starting Isaiah, keep silence before me, O islands. Now that's a strange one. And let the people renew their strength. Let them come near. Let them speak. Let us come near together to judgment. Who raised up the righteous man from the east, called him to his foot, gave the nations before him, and made him rule over kings. He gave them as dust to his sword, and as driven stubble to his bow. Who pursued them and passed safely, even by way that he had not gone with his feet. Basically, what we're saying here is, there's a place in their islands, and God has driven his people there through a place in a way that they've never gone before. Now, that's kind of bizarre. We read in Jeremiah chapter 31, I am a father to Israel. Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off. He that scattereth Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd doth his flock. So, the isles afar off are mentioned in the scripture. Even in Isaiah 49, it says, Listen, O isles, unto me, thou art my servant, O Israel. Oh, wait a minute. Now we have got a direct correlation between the isles and Israel, in whom I will be glorified, to bring Jacob again unto him, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, a covenant of people. In Hebrew, that word covenant of people is Brit Tam, very close to Brit An. To establish the earth, to inherit the desolate heritage, these from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. The north and the west. Where are the islands to the north and to the west of Jerusalem? Because Jerusalem is the center of the world. Think about that. In Isaiah 24:15 it says, The name of the Lord God of Israel in the isles of the sea. Isaiah 42:4, The isles shall wait for his law. Hearken unto me, my people, O my nation, mine arm shall judge the people. The isles shall wait upon me. We have this passage, passage after passage, talking about the isles of the sea and tying it to Jacob. Isaiah chapter 11, In that day the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant which is left of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Ethiopia, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Now, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy's name, but he wrote an important book in Hebrew. He was a Hebrew. He says, the isles of the sea in biblical terminology refer to provinces by the sea, that is, places far away over the sea. The intention is to the exiles of Israel and the continent of Europe, as explained in the commentary of Raddick, and also to the exiles of Israel in the continents of America, Australia, and in other areas that are over the seas as far as the land of Israel is concerned. The outcasts of Israel are the 10 tribes. So that's where Genesis chapter 41. Now this is Joseph and his wife, to those who don't realize it. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name, and I don't even know how to pronounce that. And he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. So Joseph had a wife who was tied into the royalty of ancient Egypt. So his offspring were half Egyptians, okay? Under that. Now in Genesis 41, continuing, and unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, of which Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah the priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, which means forgetfulness. For God, he said, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God has called me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Ephraim means double fruitfulness. So there's some background on Ephraim. And it continues here, and Israel said to Joseph, I have not thought to see your face, but in fact God has also shown me your offspring. So Joseph brought them beside his knee, that would be Ephraim and Manasseh, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim on his right hand towards Israel's left, and Manasseh on his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head. He did one of these things, something strange going on here. And he laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. So he didn't give the greatest blessing to Manasseh, he gave it to, that was strange.
Isn't that similar to the Esau
And Jacob?
and
Jacob and Esau? Yeah, because Jacob didn't get the, what do you
Esau
call
did
it?
not get the blessing, Jacob did.
Well, Jacob got it because he was the oldest, but Esau, conned him out of it with a bowl of soup.
Oh, yeah.
So, and he blessed Joseph, that was Israel, and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Let my name be on them. Whoa, he didn't say that to anybody else but Ephraim and Manasseh. So if you are looking for Israel in end times, where should you look? Find Ephraim and Manasseh. And the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. Well, Abraham and Isaac, you're going to find them in Ephraim and Manasseh. And let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Wherever these people are, there's a bunch of them. It's not some little remote tribe in northwest Afghanistan. This is a massive group of people on planet Earth. Now, when Joseph saw his father had laid his right hand on Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, not so, father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your hand on his head. But the father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He shall become a people, and he shall also be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations, only half a hair's breadth away from a commonwealth of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he said Ephraim before Manasseh. So wherever you find Ephraim and Manasseh in the end times, you would find the descendants of Ephraim coming up first, followed by. In Hosea chapter 1, it says, Then God said, Let his name be Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the places where I said unto you, You are not my people, there it shall be said of them, You are the sons of the living God. This was a prophecy given to Judah and to Israel. And Israel was divorced, and it said, and I guess I should have recorded that and put it in there, it says that you will not know who you are. You are going to be completely divorced. Now, Judah, I'm going to treat you differently. I'm not going to divorce you, but wherever you go, you're going to know who you are, but you're going to be chased all over the planet by the sword. And they were, and continue to. In Numbers 32, so Moses gave Gilead to Machir, son of Manasseh, and he dwelt in it, and also Yair, the son of Manasseh, and went and took its small towns, and he called them Havoth Yair. Now, this word, Jair, in Hebrew, that's pronounced Eri. Eri. And this word Machir is Machiri. Remember that. Eri and Mach.
J is pronounced H.
It's actually a Y.
Y.
Eri. Now here's a picture of one of the porticos in Egypt, and it's showing the Egyptian dress. You'll notice how the dress is, well, it's more of a skirt. And that was the common clothing of the realm. You ever see that before?
Scotland.
Scotland. You ever wonder where that came from?
Tuesday we can be wearing those, right?
Yeah.
Irish Day.
Yeah. Now Machir, the Max, and Machiri is the son of Manasseh. The Scots are descended from Manasseh. The Scots are the Max who descended from Machir and are called Machir, son of Manasseh. There are thousands of MacDonalds, MacMullans, Macs, all the kinds of Scottish heritage. It is possible that the word from America may come from the Hebrew word ha-Machiri. Machiri literally means sold, and it means capitalism. Not only is Machir a Scottish thing, but the coat of many colors, the tartan given to Jacob by their ancestor Joseph, is a proud thing for the Scots. And the coat of many colors came from. Okay, the Machiri descendants were called Ha-Machiran, which sounds like American, and they were also called Ha-Machiri, which is perhaps where the name Amerigo came from. Amerigo Vespucci, and then America. Manasseh's number was 13. Why is that? Because Manasseh was the oldest, and when Jacob laid his hands on the two boys, he crossed arms and laid his right hand on Ephraim instead of Manasseh. This made Ephraim the predominant tribe of Joseph, and Manasseh became the 13th tribe. And it was that number that they carried with them. Isn't that interesting? There were 13 original colonies in America. Now, how do we know all of this is true? Well, we've kind of guessed at it a lot, but then as time went on, more information became available. And one of them is King Tut's DNA. Despite the refusal of the Secretary General of the Egyptian Supreme Council on Antiquities, Zahid Hawass, to release any DNA results which might indicate the racial ancestry of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, and the leaked results reveal that King Tut's DNA is 99.6% a match with Western European Y chromosomes. Now this is really interesting. The DNA test results were inadvertently revealed on a Discovery Channel TV documentary which was filmed with Hawass's permission, but it seems as if the Egyptian failed to spot the giveaway part of the documentary, which revealed the DNA test results of Tutankhamun. Now, This is Common's DNA went. Look at that. 70 and 80% of it are in Scotland and Ireland, which is exactly what we determined from another course, another pathway. And they all went over here to Great Britain and Ireland, Germany, that region of the world. DNA, guess where I came from? It's right there, all over Western Europe. 55% British and Irish, 25% French and German. So,
How'd you do that? Do you send a swab?
The 23.
yeah, it's 23andMe.
Oh, 23.
I'm 98% British Irish.
Are you? 98%. You're pure blood. Now, in 2nd Esdras, which is a book, if you had a 1611 King James, which I have over there, by the way, you would have a book in it called 2nd Esdras, which literally means 2nd Ezra. Sometimes it's called 4th Ezra. But it's a book that reads very much like the Revelation account, and that's one of the reasons why they didn't put it in the Bible, because they thought it to be too far out. But in chapter 13 of 2nd Esdras, it reports that those are the 10 tribes which were carried away as prisoners out of their own land at the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, so they came into another land. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Remember that verse that said, I'm going to take them on a pathway where they've never been before? And that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then showed signs to them and held steer the flood until they passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years, and the same region is called Ar-Sareth, which literally means river Sareth. And they dwelt there until a later time, and now when they shall begin to come, here's the River Sareth region. You can see it there. It's just next to the Black Sea. And you can see how this group called the Sumerians and the Saka, this is the way they traveled to get to this region called Ar-Sareth. So who was in the Saka? Here's another one showing the Ar-Sareth region. It's literally called the River Seret today. And you can see where the Black Sea is, and that's the region. It's over there in modern Romania. Now, here's the migration of the 10 tribes that we have learned. They start out in Israel, and in 722, they were moved up into Assyria, just south of the Caucasus Mountains, and placed there by Shalmaneser V. They remained in that region for a lot of years, and it wasn't until about 522 that they left and began this migration to the north and to the west. How do we know it was them? Well, there is a rock. It's in modern-day Iran. It's called the Behistun Rock. It's a granite outcropping 300 feet high. And King Darius I, who wanted to make the world known that he was a really bad dude, he attacked a group of people characterized by 10 kings. And he shows the 10 kings up here, all lined up. Their necks are tied together, their feet are tied, their hands are tied. One of them is prostrate. He's got his foot on him. And this was such a massive, such a big deal in his eyes that he had his artisans engrave in bas relief on this 300-foot cliff the events surrounding the battle and the capture of these 10 kings. Now, the interesting thing about this event is the name of this 10 tribed people. They were called by, well, let me back up a minute. You see the writing on the wall behind? that writing is in 3 languages. This Behistun rock is literally the Rosetta Stone that ties 3 different languages together. One is in Old Elamite, one is in Persian, and one is in Babylonian. Now, the Elamite and the Persian relief calls these people the Saki, Isaki. The Babylonian version calls them the Gimri. So how in the world do you get from Isaki and Gimri the 10 lost tribes of Israel? Well, here's how it happens. When the 10 tribes were taken into Assyrian captivity, they maintained the name of the 6th king, and they were known as the king of Umri. At least in our translation, the name was Omri. He was the 6th king of the northern tribes. And I guess he was such an important guy. By the way, his son was named Ahab. Anybody remember Ahab? Well, Umri became, they liked what he did, and they became known as the people of Umri. But the name Umri is a bad translation from Hebrew to English. It begins with the Hebrew consonant ayin, and an ayin sounds like a cough. So it's not Umri, it's Kumri. The Kumri got translated from a CH to a G in Babylonian. They were known as the Kimri, or the Kumri, or the Gimri. Now, it gets even more interesting because the Persians knew them by another name. And that was, they also liked to be called the sons of Isaac. And their full name in the Persian language was Saki Sonis, which was shortened to the Saki or the Isaki. And so now we've got a tie between the 10 lost tribes and this people called the Kumri, the Gimri, or the Isaki. The Gimri got perverted over time to Kimri, and eventually Cimmerian or Cimmerian, and it was later shortened by the Romans to Celt or Celt or the Keltoi. And so they were also known by one of their habits, and one of their habits was they liked to worship calves. The word for calf in Hebrew is ingel. So they were known as the Ingels and the Saxons. The Saxons and the Ingles. And the word Ingleland means land of the Ingles. The land Britann literally means covenant land. British means covenant man. The Isles of the North and the West, from now secular history, we can show these people were the remnants of the 10 lost tribes. And here's the story with the Gimri and the Saki. I guess I should have forwarded the slide, but there it is for you. Now, there is a copy of Acts, which has 29 chapters in it. If you will look in your book of Acts, it only has 28. But the 29th chapter of Acts is found in the Turkish archives in Istanbul, which was formerly Constantinople. And the beginning, the prologue to the 29th chapter of Acts reads as follows. And Paul, full of the blessings of Christ and abounding in the Spirit, departed out of Rome, determined to go to Spain, for he had a long time proposed to journey thitherward, and was minded also to go hence to Britain. For he had heard in Phoenicia that certain of the children of Israel about the time of the Assyrian captivity had escaped by sea to the isles far off, as spoken by the prophet Esdras, and called by the Romans Britain. And the Lord commanded the gospel to be preached far hence to the Gentiles and to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So Paul, at least according to the 29th chapter of Acts, was going to teach in Britain to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Isaiah 41, continuing. That was the first 3 verses in Isaiah. Who hath wrought and done it, and called the generations from the beginning? I, the Lord, the first, and with the last, I am he. The isles saw it and feared. The ends of the earth were afraid and drew near and came. They helped everyone his neighbor, and everyone said to his brother, be of good courage. So the craftsman encouraged the goldsmith, who smooths it with the hammer, and inspired him who strikes the anvil, saying, it is ready for soldering, and then he fastened it with pegs, that it might not totter. We're talking about idols here. But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend, whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from the farthest regions, and said to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you, and I have not cast you away. Basically, what God is saying here is, he has moved Jacob to the isles. And there are people there that are making idols, but he's trying to remind them that, hey, I am God, not these idols. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who are incensed against you shall be ashamed and disgraced. They shall be nothing, and those who strive with you shall perish. It has been the nature of the United States and Great Britain to never have been defeated. Now, the Romans came pretty close to it, but they never totally defeated the people of Great Britain. There is another passage which says that those who, I'll think of it in a minute. At any rate, you shall seek them and not find them. Those who contend with you, those who war against you shall be as nothing, as a non-existent thing. Every time we've gone to war with somebody, we've completely dominated them and wiped them out. That's pretty much what they're saying here. And then, of course, and he who blesses Israel, I will bless, and he who curses Israel, I will curse. Look back in history to the nations that have cursed the United States. Remember when the Iranians took our hostages? They cursed the United States. What happened to them shortly after we got our hostages back? They went to war with Iraq and lost over 1 million people. Look at the nations that have blessed the United States after they have been in war with them. Take Japan as an example. They were in awe of the United States. And what happened to them? They received a blessing. They're one of the strongest economies in the world. But every nation that has come against the United States has paid for it. Right now, how is it that Iran, who allegedly has hardly any relationship with China, is one of the nations that is the most affected by this virus? They're dying by the hundreds there. They're saying you can see the burn pits from outer space where they're putting all these bodies in Iran. Of course, they're not telling anybody much of that. But so, at any rate, don't fool around with God or God's people. For I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, fear not, I will help you. Fear not, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel. I will help you, says the Lord, and your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Behold, I will make you into a new threshing sledge with sharp teeth. You shall thresh the mountains and beat them small and make them the hills like chaff. We're speaking to mountains here as high points in humanity, like kings and princes and so forth, because that's what has happened. The United States and Great Britain have been the battle axe of the Lord throughout history. Every time a nation has come up like Germany, going to dominate the world with absolute evil. I don't know if any of you know the background of Hitler, but he was an occultist. And he had people practicing the occult in his administration constantly. And they had a general who would keep his place in a castle for months at a time until the Allies would find it. And the night that we would decide to bomb it, he would move. He had pre-knowledge. He worked with demons, is what I'm trying to say. And so...
Didn't he have the Spear of Destiny?
He had, now that's another story, the Spear of Destiny.
while, but he
And
got
as long as he had it, the Spear of Destiny is allegedly the sword which was manufactured by Phineas the prophet, which allegedly was used as the symbol of power for the Sanhedrin. And the soldier that lanced the side of Christ used that spearhead. And there was, it became an occult object. And the occult object had a message that went along with it, that whoever held that spear point held the destiny of the world in his hand for good or for evil. So, moving right along, you shall winnow them, the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them, and you shall rejoice in the Lord, in the glory of the Holy One of Israel. The poor and the needy seek water, but there is none. Their tongues fail for thirst, and I, the Lord, will hear them, and I, God of Israel, will not forsake them, and I will open up rivers in desolate heights, and fountains in the midst of valleys, and I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. When do you suppose that's going to happen? Probably in the millennial reign. And I will plant in the wilderness the cedar and the acacia tree, the myrtle and the oil tree, and I will set in the desert the cypress tree and the pine and the box tree together, that they may see and know and consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it. Present your case, says the Lord. Bring forth your strong reasons, says the King of. Let them bring forth and show us what will happen. We're talking about the idols now. Let them show the former things that were, that they may consider them and know the latter end of them, or declare to us things to come. Show the things that are to come hereafter, and that we may know that you are gods. Yes, do good or do evil, that we may be dismayed and see it together. Indeed, you are nothing. Your work is nothing. He that chooses you is an abomination. So, God has a way of dealing with idols, and he considers an idol an abomination. The abomination of desolation, which occurred in the times past when, who was it? The king at the Maccabean rebellion, what was his name? Remember? At any rate, he erected an image of Zeus in the Holy of Holies. And the scripture called that an abomination that makes desolate. And there will be another one. And that will be by the Antichrist. He will do the same thing, set himself up in the Holy of Holies and declare himself to be God. But to God, you make an idol, that's an idol. For I looked, and there was no man. I looked among them, there was no counselor, who, when asked of them, could answer a word. Indeed, they were all worthless. Their works are nothing. Their molten images are wind and confusion. I have raised up one from the north, and he will come. From the rising of the sun he shall call my name. And he shall come against the princes as though through mortar, and as the potter treads clay. Who has declared from the beginning that we may know, and former times that we may say, he is righteous. Surely there is no one who shows, surely there is no one who declares, surely there is no one who hears your words. For the first time I said to Zion, look, there they are, and I will give to Jerusalem one who brings good tidings. The end. So most of chapter 41 is God complaining about idols and the fact that they are of no value. And he's also stating and calling Jacob and Israel in the isles of the north and the west. And now we understand what he was talking about. Ephraim and Manasseh, let my name be on them. My name, Israel. And where were they? They transferred from the region south of the Caucasus, across Georgia, the ancient land of Georgia, through a mountain range of the Caucasus. And one of the mountains that they crossed through, they called it Zion. And it's still called Zion to this day. And the ascent where they went up the mountains is called to this day the ascent of Israel. And so the path, they're all over the place. And the tribe of Dan, who was going along with them, remember it said the admonition to Dan was he would be a serpent along the trail. What that means is he was going to leave his mark everywhere he went. And everywhere you see the name Dan, Din, or Dun, Dunsmuir, Denmark, the Dnieper River, the Danube, every place you see these names, that was Dan leaving his mark along the trail. And it all ended up, Dan ended up in Denmark, and it's an interesting study as to where all the tribes ended up. But
What's confusing to me though, is you're giving all this evidence that Manasseh is the United States and Ephraim was the British Isles.
mhm.
But it seems like it should be the opposite. Manasseh is forgetful. And yeah, we have forgotten Christ here, but man, it's worse over there. They have no clue who Christ, they're almost atheist over there now, and at least we're not. We're still
Well-
basically a Christian nation.
Well, it'd be hard to call us a Christian nation, but
Scotland and Ireland, the British Isles, they're so far.
well,
from
they
Christ.
have really lost it.
forgotten.
But the thing that separates them is Ephraim was to come up first. He was put in front of Manasseh. Great Britain was established long before the United States. We are two brothers, right?
Yeah.
We came up second. We are a singular great nation. Great Britain is a commonwealth of nations. There's Canada, Australia, Great Britain, Scotland, Ireland. All of these nations are a commonwealth, just as the admonition to Joseph was given to his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So.
It just seems like they're the ones that are, and we are forgetful.
Oh, well, there is
but
no
they're
question
more
about it.
forgetful than we are.
Well, yeah, but
What you mean, Haley? Come here, bud.
But can we cast the first stone?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we've got.
we got our demons here too. But at any rate, I'm gonna end this right here and then we can talk.